From Ralph's naval research discovered that the auditory system responds to electromagnetic energy in a portion of the radio frequency spectrum at low power densities, well below that necessary for biological damage. The human auditory system and a table radio, he said, may be one order of magnitude apart in sensitivity in a portion of the radio frequency spectrum. Fry proposed stimulating the nervous system without the damage caused by electrodes. Two radios, microwave auditory effect in the applications, and human auditory response to modulated electromagnetic energy. Dr. Fry's work had obvious implications for covert operations. Cardial rhythm, or frog's heart. The heart stopped beating. Dr. Fry had perfected the induction of heart seizures by beamed electromagnetics. He microwaved cats and found that stimulation of the hypothalamus had a powerful effect on emotions. Fry found that human subjects exposed to 1310 megahertz to 2982 megahertz microwaves at average power densities of 0.4 to 2 milliwatts per cubic centimeter perceived auditory sounds. The peak power densities were on the order of 200 to 300 200 to 400 hertz. Dr. Fry referred to this auditory phenomenon as RF, or radio frequency sound. The sensation occurred instantaneously at average incident power densities well below that necessary for known biological damage, and appeared to originate from within or near the back of the head. Fry was reluctant to experiment on humans, but others, particularly paperclip scientists, were not. Dr. Ross Addy worked at UCLA and rigged the brains of land animals to transmit to a radio receiver which shot back signals to a device that sparked any behavior desired by the researcher. Dr. Addy worked closely with émigré Nazi scientists after World War II. Addy determined that emotional states and behavior can be remotely influenced merely by placing a subject in an electromagnetic field. By directing a carrier frequency to stimulate the brain and using amplitude modulation to shape the wave to mimic a desired EEG frequency, he was able to impose a 4.5 CPS theta rhythm on his subjects and put them to sleep. Dr. Joseph Sharp and Alan Fry experimented with microwaves seeking to transmit spoken words directly into the audio cortex via a pulsed microwave analog of the speaker's sound vibration. Indeed, Fry's work in this field, dating back to 1960, gave rise to the so-called Fry effect, which is now more commonly referred to as microwave hearing. Within the Pentagon, this ability is known as artificial telepathy. Addy and others have compiled an entire library of frequencies and pulsation rates which can affect the mind and nervous system. Hundreds of people in the valley are hearing voices in their heads. And those voices are being transmitted by microwave or other methods.
Well, several viewers asked us to investigate what they call electronic harassment. KMIR 6's Angela Monroe joins us now with what she's discovered. Angela.
Electronic harassment, synthetic telepathy, voice-to-skull technology. Chances are you haven't heard of these terms, but after searching the internet, I found dozens of websites dedicated to the phenomenon and several Valley residents who say they're victims.
How much more can you invade me than to go into my brain? It sounds like somebody else is reading the book, only it's thoughts.
We're not having a group hallucination. This is actually something that's happening.
These men all live in the area, didn't know each other before the voices started, and say someone is playing mind games with them.
Mostly it's a lot of derogatory comments about whatever you're thinking about.
The only time I ever had
Microwaves and other radio frequencies are known to affect the human body. But could they be responsible for voices in people's heads? In Chicago, Illinois, a world authority on microwave hearing shows how it could work.
I'm hearing a micro pulse like a click. Now it sounds like a chirp with a tonal quality to it.
Professor James Lynn is hearing sounds that aren't there. But he's not crazy. Pulses of microwave energy are being generated and fired at him from behind.
Microwaves can be heard depending on the individual, depending on the hearing acuity of the individual. Individuals with fairly normal hearing can hear microwaves at quite a low level.
The energy of the absorbed microwaves causes brain tissue to very slightly heat up and expand, causing a pressure wave to be picked up by the hearing mechanism in the inner ear. Professor Lynn is far from hearing voices, but it could be possible to send coded signals to an agent this way.
Brain is an electrical organ. It is susceptible to electrical signals. Since microwave is electrical, therefore, in principle, one could embed or encode information in the microwave signal such that it could be perceived by the brain.
So we can't hear this. It's going to, I haven't turned it on yet. What I do is going to blast out a 65 kilohertz beam. Because the wavelength is so small, it doesn't spread. The 65 kilohertz has a wavelength like that. So it's going to be, in that sense, similar to a laser. It just comes right out as a beam. Now, how do we make that audible? Well, they put a modulation on top of the 65 kilohertz. There's a modulation. And now, here's the next thing I have to say. That 65 kilohertz, we don't think, you certainly can't hear it, and we don't think it'll hurt you. And it's very high amplitude. And what happens when you have two sound waves like this, sound plus sound can create sound, but only at high amplitudes. At low amplitude, sound waves just travel right through each other. You may be sort of familiar with this. But at high amplitudes, you can create sound. So what happens in this apparatus is, the audio sound, the sound that you're going to hear, is actually created in the beam, not here. And because it's created in the beam, and it stays in the beam, we have a beam of sound. So let me demonstrate this for you. Let me turn it on. It's worth the $2,000. It's not our money. Now, the sound that you're hearing is created in this beam. It almost sounds like it's coming from your head. So let me try to scan the whole audience here so everybody gets a description. Absolutely remarkable. Are you getting it? Let's try to one more thing. Let's try to bounce it off the wall. Raise your hand if you can very clearly hear it. I'm going to try to bounce it off the wall. Look at where the hands are raised. Put your hands down. It's bouncing off the wall. It's the real.
Microwaves and other radio frequencies are known to affect the human body. But could they be responsible for voices in people's heads? In Chicago, Illinois, a world authority on microwave hearing shows how it could work.
I'm hearing a micro pulse like a click. Now it sounds like a chirp with a tonal quality to it.
Professor James Lynn is hearing sounds that aren't there. But he's not crazy. Pulses of microwave energy are being generated and fired at him from behind.
Microwaves can be heard depending on the individual, depending on the hearing acuity of the individual, individuals with fairly normal hearing can hear microwaves at quite a low level.
The energy of the absorbed microwaves causes brain tissue to very slightly heat up and expand, causing a pressure wave to be picked up by the hearing mechanism in the inner ear. Professor Lin is far from hearing voices, but it could be possible to send coded signals to an agent this way.
Brain is an electrical organ. It is susceptible to electrical signals. Since microwave is electrical, therefore, in principle, one could embed or encode information in the microwave signal such that it could be perceived by the brain.
The idea of his sound spotlight system is to make sure that only one person can hear him, even though they're 20 meters away.
Hey, you there. You on the laptop. I think it's time for a break. Hey, you. Looking at CDs. We're watching.
Taking the mickey out of innocent readers might seem a bit childish, but there's a reason why Dr. Pompey comes here to test his kit.
A library is about the most sensitive area you can think of for background noise and generating sound that people don't want to hear. But with the audio spotlight, we can deliver sound specifically directly to people within the library without bothering the other people that are reading quietly.
It's stimulated once every 4 seconds. And that produces relaxation and a very pleasant sensation. Similarly, using the appropriate fields, we can induce fear and apprehension, but clearly that would be unethical in that setting.
Dr. Persinger's tests suggest that carefully programmed electromagnetic frequencies can tap into individual brains and influence people's emotions.
The cognitive processes of the human brain are really quite simple. And if you understand how they work, you can make entire populations think and decide no matter what you wish.
Many experts are skeptical of such an Orwellian scenario, but Persinger thinks the implications are chillingly real.
Suppose you generate a field that produces fear, fundamental fear, in large numbers of people. And then, over the television, more traditional ways, you say, the reason we're having this fear is because of this particular group. And now you start to move the population believing in a direction that you wish.
The promise of truly bloodless war may come only with the most devastating weapon of all. If the human mind and will become the battleground of the future, War 2020 may be won without so much as a whimper, let alone a bang.
The CIA claims torture works. Now, they're talking about physical torture. Now, no-touch torture is a whole new topic, a whole new category. Most people don't believe it's happening. You'd be tortured in your own home. No one will believe you. But this is torture, and I want there to be no doubt about it. This is torture, destruction of life, and destruction to misery for all these people. And it's a war crime. It's a crime against humanity for sure. But I really came out to speak because I'm disgusted that this is being done to my own citizens. I did not agree to work on these programs for that purpose. Now, a lot of people are like, well, how can they pipe pains into your head? Remember, we're talking about cloning, brain heterodyning is the actual word, which means modulation of other brain signals within yours. So it's almost like two people are living in the same head. A localized search for that particular target needs to be done first. So a lot of the targets that I've interviewed, they live in apartment buildings, for example, and then people move in above and beside them, and they can hear large equipment being wheeled around. And so initially, the person's brain print, their particular energy signature, just like a thumbprint or something like that, needs to be collected before the long process of retraining the brain to listen to another human being's brain or a computer.
Okay, so there's a process. You're talking about the initial process seems to require possibly
a localized
the person.
Yeah, sensor system.
A sensor system. So then it's recording that person's data, and that person, the link is being established so that person's brain is sort of getting acclimated, maybe unconsciously to.
Very good. I like that word, acclimated.
Any other? Okay, and then over time, the distance, once the target's energy signature is figured out, then it can be done.
Yes, it's irrelevant almost anywhere on planet Earth. Anywhere on planet Earth.
And you were talking about brain reading just a minute ago. I imagine over time it would become more easy to read or easier to read an individual's brain because their brain patterns would correspond to particular thoughts that.
You got it. Excellent explanation, better than I could say it. So you imagine you have two neural networks, and it's a field of study that I've done quite a bit, and they're trying to learn each other. They're trying to communicate. And let me give this analogy. You have a spouse. After a long time, you can complete each other's sentences, and that's the kind of confirmation you're trying to get.
So it's like it grows with you, though.
It grows with you. It learns with you. Absolutely. And it's also why these experiments are lifelong generally, not always. But this takes time. This takes a computer to actually do the transformation from one brain to another, that every word you say, and then they have a set vocabulary, and they start testing the words out, and then after time, most human beings have a vocabulary of about 1,000 words, 5,000 words max. Shakespeare had 11,000 words. And once your vocabulary is mapped out, well, then they can put it on the automated mode, what are called chatterboxes, something that I worked on, to keep the human being talking in perpetuation, basically to a machine, thinking it's a real human being. And they do this to scale, automate a lot of the degradation in the torture process, the breaking down of the will. But as well as you need this to keep the lock on of the signal. I mean, if you break the signal in some fashion, music, for example, can do that temporarily, but your brain always goes back to its natural patterns. And so they got you. Once they have your brain patterns matched, they got you. You can't escape that very easily. So they're cataloging and classifying brain patterns, which can be transformed and transmitted into other human beings. So they're testing that as well. And let me give you an example that a lot of TIs go through. They will say something like, "I'm stabbing you in the back. Can you feel that?" And the TI will be like, "Yes, I feel that." And then they'll give it a score, okay? How much misery and suffering did that cause? And all that's being done is being played back into the brain, the central nervous system. It's not an actual physical touch. There is no harm being done in terms of the physicality of the individual, but they'll go through these like 3-a-day different tortures. Okay, we're gassing your eyes with tear gas, and their eyes will actually tear up. There will be a response, and they'll itch and they can't see, but this is all done through the brain. It's the brain's reaction to these tortures that they're applying back to them. We call it no-touch torture, and so the assumption for most human beings, well, if I don't see blood or mutilation, it can't be that bad. Well, what the brain presents is far worse than that. In fact, the pains are amplified, sensitized, and are extremely vulnerable to these circuits being stimulated. You got to remember, this is called offensive information warfare technology. So it's just a computer. You are trying to crash that computer. You're trying to crash that human being. And you map all of the motivations we have, primitive motivations, due to genetics, as well as the cultural motivations, and then you try to manipulate them by messing with those buttons, and that can include altering emotions, which are very important to our behavior. And so they call these emotional signature clusters, and you can read them quite clearly. This isn't classified information. But it's interrogation and torture has a lot of purposes. They're trying to grasp all sorts of data from how effective can we make them kill each other themselves to can we make them do stupid stuff like wrap their cat in tin foil, make them think that the energy's coming from there. I have one interview I had. Well, that's false correlation. And so I try to teach these interrogation tactics to these TIs so they know at least what's going on with them. And one of the techniques that they're practicing is they give a group, and we'll call them these, how's that? We'll call them the psychic warriors. Give them a good name. And they're trying to figure out what the bad guy knows. And these are the innocent Americans. Okay,
and the psychic warriors are the DOD.
Yeah, you can put names. Yeah, that's right. And so the psychic warriors, they want to, they're not given any information, just a little bit about the subject. NSA and the other agencies, they have everything about this individual. So they have proof of what this individual's life is about. So these handlers or psychic warriors are trying to get as much information from the target as they can by walking them back through their history. Well, you told us this, we know this about you, and making them erase the memory. These are old tactics. They're used physically as well with drugs and stuff. But this can be done now with this new cybernetic warfare technology. And they try to get every little bit of information from you and find out if it's true. So they get scored on it. Well, how did I do in the end? Whenever the project ends after a couple of years, and they get scored on it. Now, this is called hyper game theory. It goes beyond that. John Nash of A Beautiful Mind, there's a movie about that. He won a Nobel Prize in game theory, which is used in business and is used in warfare quite a bit. Well, it's gone beyond that to hyper game theory, and a professor has a paper published. People like to understand the mathematics of that. And it's the basic gist of it is to see how do you make someone walk down a certain path. So you're playing a chess game, a multi-dimensional chess game. How do you make a rational player go down to walk them to their death, or walk them into jail, or commit a crime? And so they want to see, out of all of these people we're targeting, okay, the first logical thing they do is go to the police. Well, the police can't help you. They're going to give you a lockup and 72 hours and a sideboard. And then they go to the FBI. And
Mr. President 420 is my other channel. Going live on.
About this. This isn't within their classification. And so they do what they're supposed to do, and they write petitions, and they try to write the congressmen and presidents stuff. And what they're doing is they're figuring out how you shut all this information down. What are people going to try so we can shut it down? And this will never be exposed or released.
Yeah, especially if we're talking about doing it without putting someone in a scam on their head.
Yeah, exactly. This is over the entire population. And so they're increasing this, and a lot of people won't believe me, and that's fine. But they're increasing this. They are scaling this technology to the entire population.
Go to the other channel.
It's going, when people are awakening